All right. Good morning, everyone. How are you? This is Monica Shimonik, and I am with Moms Unshackled. And for those who don't know me, what I do is I work with moms who have suffered from fraud, abuse, discrimination, and retaliation in the family courts that led to the loss of their rights to their own children without cause. And what I do is I help them rebuild their lives and reclaim their health so that they can go forward and create a legacy for their children, and usually that legacy involves some sort of reform, some sort of lobby work, some sort of, creating a voice for themselves so that they can elicit change in the laws that created the separation in the first place. So this is a very impromptu, on the fly live stream. So I'm just going to make up stuff as I go. But one thing so it's January. This is the time of year where, your local legislators are petitioning for new laws, new bills, new change. My theme for my wellness, the wellness aspect of Moms Unshackled is new beginnings, new change. And again, in the laws, we are seeing new changes as well. We have a lot of new laws being passed all throughout the whole country. So what a lot of you people don't understand, and this is normal because most of us aren't like government officials, so we won't know these things. A lot of us don't even become awakened to stuff like this until we suffer a traumatic injustice in our lives, and that's what causes us to go forward and learn. So for 3 years after my son was taken, I didn't do anything with my local government. I didn't know that that I even had any power to do that. I didn't have a lot of education. I just had a college degree. I didn't have any connections. And I was terrified of speaking to people. I was afraid of public speaking. I had no confidence. I just sat through a 14-month proceeding where I was sitting on the witness stand, being berated by my former partner's lawyer about how I shouldn't have any access to my son. So naturally, my confidence was just like nowhere. It was non-existent. So the thing with family law, the thing with family court, and this is another live stream topic, but I'll just insert this, is that any baggage, any harm you had in your childhood, which we all have, even people with perfect childhoods, we have little injuries that happen to us in our psyche when we're kids. We get picked last during softball, kickball, we get pushed down into a mud puddle in recess, we get laughed at on the bus, we have the wrong answer in school and the kids laugh at us. So there's those things. And then there might be some things that have happened at home. Even if you had a perfectly wonderful childhood, you might have drawn a picture for a parent and shown your parent your artwork, and they might have said, well, that looks kind of weird, like they might have just said like a innocent comment, but that could have created a micro injury in your psyche, And during our lives, we all pick up on this just from being alive. We are always accumulating tiny little psychic injuries. And some of us have actually been abused as children. So, whether you've been abused or not abused, you're going to carry trauma and baggage into your adult life. That's just normal. And the thing with family court is that it takes all of your inner fears and your inner insecurities and it magnifies them in a public room. And then when a judge takes your kids away from you, it solidifies all of your baggage and it makes it true, because what we do as parents is we assume if a judge wrote it and found this fact that, that I'm not a good parent or I shouldn't be with my child, then it must be true because judges are important and I'm just some random parent. And this is just like things that we tell ourselves that we are socialized to believe because we grow up thinking that the justice system works. And so when a judge takes our kids away, and we didn't know we did anything wrong because we didn't. But when you lose your child because you work third shift, or you lose your child because you didn't get straight A's in college, by the way, that was one of the things that was held against me, was my grade point average in college. I didn't graduate with honors from UConn. So these things that like are creating insecurities in our lives become just magnified in the courtroom. And you walk away from court without your kids, you lost your life savings, and you're like, oh my God, like I am just a horrible person. Like that's a normal reaction to have after you leave family court. And so that was a huge segue. But there, it does tie in. So when you come out of family court, you lose your kids, you lose your money, and you have all these like battle scars from that experience. The last thing you're going to feel confident in is advocating for change. And if you come right out of family court having lost your kids and you go and like make new laws with your legislators, God bless you. You are a phenomenal human being. But the majority of us simply don't have the confidence and the knowledge and the willpower to do any of those things. So anyway, a lot of parents at this time of year, because I'm like putting bugs in people's ear, like go lobby for change, talk to your legislators, call your representative. They tell me, I don't know how to do that. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to speak. I don't know how to write. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at my baby. She's good. I don't know how to write things. I'm not a good writer. There's all these things that come up. And I like to lovingly and gently call them excuses. And I understand why you have those excuses. But they're still excuses, even though you have a good reason to have those excuses. The excuse that people come up with are all those things. Plus they say, I don't know the laws enough to ask for new laws or ask to amend the current laws. They say another thing parents are afraid of is the opposition. They don't want the bar industry, trashing their opinion. I mean, it's scary. You go to a public hearing, like there's a room full of people, like the bar association is on one side of the room usually. And then like there might be like 6 parents and a lot of like professionals who support family law corruption because they make a lot of money on it. So you're kind of cornered, and you're surrounded by people who created so much trauma in your life, or people who work in the industry that ruined your life and took all your money. So it's natural to not want to even be a part of this, However, one thing I teach moms, and I encourage moms to do when they work with me, is to do something to bring forth some sort of change. So, I accidentally set the settings on this live stream to private. So let me try to make it public to see if people could hop on. Otherwise, what's the point? It's just like a journal if no one's watching. So hopefully people will start to come on now. I just realized I had like a setting, a private only thing. So as I was saying, it's scary. It's not a comfortable thing at first, but as time goes on, as you break through those limiting beliefs, you will grow. You will find that this is a very healing and empowering process. And again, if you're not a speaker and you don't want to be a speaker, you can learn to write to your legislators. You could write op-eds in your local newspaper. There are things you can do. There's a million things you could do. And if you work with me, I will go over these things with you. We will spend a lot of time on this, how to amplify your voice and get your voice out there and tell your story about your legal abuse in a very empowered way. There's 2 ways to tell your story. There's the complaining way, which is something that we all do, especially in the beginning. I'm going to go get my daughter. I'm so sorry. She's getting a little fussy. Hang on. Okay. Oops. Hi, baby. Silly girl. Silly baby. You want to learn? Maya wants to learn how to do this. So, okay. So this is Maya. Maya is 7 months old, and she wants to be a part of the live stream. So, what was I saying? So, there are 2 ways to tell your story. One way is the complaining way, and I believe that we all have to go through that process. I know I did it. So you could complain about your story, and you can You can tell your story, and I mean this with so much love, guys, okay? I did this for years and years and years. You can tell your story from a victim point of view, which does have some power. You know, there is something to be gained with that. You know, I think it's kind of like a rite of passage, and I think it's necessary to go through that. So if you're in that spot where you're like, oh my God, I feel like a victim, I feel like I'm just draining people with my story, I feel like I'm burdening people with my story, it's okay that you're thinking that. You know, don't beat yourself up for that. The last thing you need to do is come down on yourself for having a human response to your abuse. And the second way to tell your story is to tell your story in a very empowered way with a solution base attached to it, like a solution standpoint, like from a solution oriented perspective, if that makes sense. And so what I mean by that is, you know, my husband and I were just talking about this like 15 minutes ago, because he's writing to legislators right now. This is all we do in January. This is like the legislative session. So I told my husband, I said, look, if you're going to argue about something in a public hearing, and we were just discussing this, like how do we properly testify in a public hearing to ask for change in our laws in a way that's going to make legislators actually want to help us instead of being yet another angry, disgruntled parent. Because the angry, disgruntled parent is the label that the bar industry will give you, because they don't want to change anything. They are making gaggles of money off of our children's pain and our pain. And so when parents come in and they tell their story to legislators, the bar industry is then going to come in and say, well, these are just angry parents. They don't know how to put their kids' best interests first. They couldn't come to an agreement in court. They asked the judge to make a decision and they didn't like what that judge did. And so you need to ignore those parents. And unfortunately, the bar industry does that, and unfortunately it works. And so the alternative way to tell your story is to tell your story slightly removed from your own situation. Like, I think you should definitely tie in your own story, but definitely talk about it like as a global problem, because it is. It's definitely a public health problem. This the family court corruption causes massive deficits in our economy, our budget. It is a public health threat. It absolutely is a public health threat. And I could go into that in a whole nother live stream. And it's a threat to the housing industry, because when parents are dumping money into attorneys to fight for equal rights in court, they are not paying their mortgage. Okay, so that harms everybody. That harms landlords. That harms property values. You know, it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. So if you could approach family law corruption from other angles, other than the judge was mean to me and the judge was nasty to me and I filed a motion to do this and the judge said no, and talking about your own story is useful. And I'll tell you, if you choose to talk about your own story, which is totally amazing, because whatever is empowering to you, you should do it. If it's empowering to you to talk about your own story, do it. Because this is all about health and healing, and like it's about you. You know, you need to be a complete and thriving individual. And if getting to that point, if getting to that point requires you telling your personal story, do it. But get some coaching around it so that you can tell your story. And then the most valuable thing you could do is describe the law that is associated with your story that was violated. Okay, so for example, judges, because of the best interest statute, judges are literally allowed to do whatever the F they want to your child, which I'm telling you, I say this all the time. If your judge decides it's in the child's best interest for your child to live on Mars with a spacesuit and a breathing tank and like powdered food and no parents, if the judge makes that decision, I'm gonna put the baby down, then legally the judge is allowed to do that. Whoops. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. and you come into and say, oh my God, the judge made my kid live on Mars, and I can't even send emails to my kid. No one's going to care, because the law says the judge gets to decide that that's the best interest for your child. Okay, so I'm purposely exaggerating, because honestly, some of these judges' decisions are really that dumb. You won't believe what these judges have done, or maybe you do. So, so what you need to do is say, find the law that is connected to the decision your judge made, and talk about that law and why the judge violated that law. So for example, your child is being abused in one home, the other parent's home, not your home. And your child's being abused and abused and abused. The judge puts custody into the home of the abuser. So now your child is with their abuser, 28 days a month or something like that, or something ridiculous like that. And you have no access, almost no access. You have to, instead of saying the judge allowed my child to be abused and that's wrong, the bar association is going to come and say, well, the judge decided that was the best interest for the child, to be in the abused home. A judge will literally, and they have done this, trust me, if you want to know the details, private message me and I will send you the case. There was a case, and this happens all the time, where the judge put the child with the abuser on purpose to strengthen that relationship and to build that relationship back up. There are judges that might say it's good for a child to be in a unhappy home because it will build character. So again, any decision a judge makes can be justified because of best interest, okay? So what you have to do is you have to say, the judge made this decision and it was against the law because this statute 28A-25 or whatever, says if the child is suffering bodily harm, they cannot be in that environment, or whatever, So find the law that contradicts the best interest, and then you present your legislators with that. And then the bar industry can't come and say, well, best interest, because it's like, no, best interest doesn't apply when you're breaking the law, period. So there's one other point I want to make. Well, two other points. The other point I want to make is that there are two kinds of people that will dismiss your story and your claims. People who are ignorant about family law, which is a lot of people. You might have people like that in your family, friends, coworkers, your boss. Well-meaning, nice people will still not really take in your story because they just don't get it. And that's fine, Are you being silly? You're being, because you see yourself, don't you? So they're going to, you'll get some opposition, and it will be from well-meaning people who are just not knowledgeable in family law. They will say stuff like, well, if this parent had more education, they'd be allowed to keep their child. They'll just say things like that, like things that have nothing to do with your actual rights, but they'll just, in a well-meaning fashion, will just say things to dismiss you. Okay, and there's really nothing you can do about that. Like, education is necessary. That's why it's important to educate yourself on the laws before you speak to your legislators. It's just more effective that way. So the other kinds of people in family law or at these public hearings or whatever who will oppose you are narcissists. And I have found that narcissists are naturally drawn to family law, and they become family law judges, family law lawyers, family law evaluators, family law therapists, the therapists that are appointed by the judges. Narcissists tend to gravitate towards that field, and yes, I do believe I'm qualified to say that because I have been studying this for 9 years, and I have watched the trends. Hi, Amy. Yeah, Mini Monica. She never cries, but crying now. They are narcissists. You need to peacefully resist their philosophies, and we'll get into that in another live stream. But I'll close with just one thing. You need to let go of the limiting beliefs that you are not good enough to lobby for change. You need to dismiss that. The minute you get a thought in your head that says, I can't do this, you need to be like, okay, thank you, bye-bye, and just diminish that thought from your consciousness. It's not effective, it's not empowering, it's not useful, it's not serving your community, it's not serving our future generations by having those sort of beliefs. And so even if you have to pretend that you're confident enough to do this, even if you have to pretend that you're good enough, then just do that. Fake it, and eventually it will become normal to have this sort of confidence. And I'm so sorry, I have to end. Please private message me if you want to talk about this further, okay? And I appreciate you coming on, and we will talk soon. Bye-bye.